Everybody, welcome to this episode of Gymwright Live. So last week we discussed creating a solid vision and set of core values for your gym, which naturally brings us to the more actionable step of creating goals based on that vision, which is the topic of this week's show. We hear and read about goal setting all the time, but how often are we taught to create our vision in a way that achieves balance in every area of your gym? So our content expert, Marcus Gurzy, who's going to be joining me in just a second, he spent a large bulk of his time working with gym owners, learning, training, questioning, and searching with them to make sure that they're setting the right goals and actually achieving them. So in doing that, he boiled down the goal setting process to 9 steps to achieve your gym's vision in a thoughtful and efficient way that creates lots of clarity in your day-to-day, which I know is something that we all want. Now, if you're at a point where you want to stop just doing exercises on your own like this and would like some real help in these areas to grow your gym in a way that's balanced and holistic and aligns with that vision, that's exactly what the Foundations program that we offer is. You'll be working one-on-one with a gym growth specialist for 6 months, and you'll get a customized coaching and actionable homework plan to achieve all of your goals. All you need to do is schedule a call with Marcus to see if the program is a good fit for your gym by going to gymwright.com/Marcus, and that's Marcus with a K. All right, let's get back to this show entitled The Secret to Successful Gym Goal Setting. Hey, Marcus with a K.
Marcus with a K, that's me.
Welcome to the show.
Why, thank you very much. You welcome to the show.
Thank you. I love being the new host. It feels really powerful.
I feel like I'm just like in the back seat now. I'm just along for the ride.
So I wanted to ask you, since we last talked, how is the garage cleaning project going?
Don't bring it up. It's continued. I thought I was rid of that project last weekend, and my wife this Saturday morning, or this last Saturday morning, was like, she was feeling all inspired, and she's like, just opens it up and just assumes the sale and goes straight for the throat. And I'm like, oh, I guess that Saturday and Sunday. But like I said last week, as much as you or I don't necessarily love cleaning out the garage and that sort of thing, it actually is, you feel awesome when you're done with it anyway. And like we probably cleared out like a third of our stuff, and you don't realize how much crap you have sitting there that you just, kind of put into the corner or put on a shelf, and just assume like, I'll get to that later. And this was later. So feeling pretty good about it. How was your weekend?
It was good. I didn't really do much. We had margaritas and just talked about life and stuff. So I'm sorry, I didn't do anything difficult. But hey, summer of 2019, maybe you'll write a song about your garage cleaning experience that took all summer.
Wrote a little song about it. Goes a little something like this. Yeah, maybe someday. But you did say something important, margaritas, because my wife and I also did margaritas, which is what made the whole garage cleaning thing much cooler. So all is well, same page. Very good.
Nice. All right, cool. So let's get right into it. Started off the show by touching on some reasons why people want to set goals. There's that clarity thing, having some clarity in your day-to-day and knowing what to do to move that baton further so that you're not just having that same day over and over again. Therefore, your business stays in that same spot. Or on the flip side, it's like having that really chaotic kind of decision-making process so your day or your business is all over the place. What would you say are some other reasons why goal setting specifically for gym owners is so important to the success of their business?
Well, for one, you got to have something to work towards, right? And, having something clearly defined that you're focusing your intentions on and your efforts on makes a big difference. You'd be surprised how many people don't actually write down their goals. A lot of people say they have goals and they'll talk about their goals, but I think the stat was like only 3% or something like that of Americans actually have goals that are written down, which is kind of mind-bending, right? So there's that, but then also measurable progress. Like you need to get into the habit of winning every day if you want to win the big game, right? And I think very few people keep working away at something without feeling some sense of accomplishment or progress towards their goal and feel satisfied. I know I wouldn't. If I wasn't able to have my hit list of what I need to do every day and that by priority, that then I can check off every day and know that if I did these 3 things or these 5 things or one thing, that I am on track for my goals. then I know that I don't get the same kind of satisfaction. I will lose motivation, right? Not many of us can sustain that for a long period of time without burning out or just getting over it. So having something that you can measure like that is really key, because if it isn't being measured, then it probably isn't being managed. And if it isn't being measured, how do you know whether or not you are moving in the right direction, let alone maximizing the potential of that opportunity?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. If I don't have a list, like a really good prioritized list to start my week or my day, that's based on a larger goal that I have, I get this feeling of like being trapped. I just feel like I just see all these little details and a long laundry list of things that I kind of don't want to do because you subconsciously know that there's no real like you feel like there's no purpose behind the things that you're doing, right? If it's not vectored towards a specific goal. And so what would you say is the biggest problem with the way that most people create their goals? Like, why doesn't it work? Like, why are only 3% of people writing down their goals?
Well, for one, I think that the reason why so few people do it is because subconsciously they know that when you write your goals down or you communicate them to someone else, that you're now on the hook for that goal, right? And you're either going to disappoint yourself if you fail or disappoint someone else if you fail. So I think that's a big factor for a lot of people. And in all reality, it's the same reason why your members or clients struggle to achieve their goals. Usually the goals are just flat out too vague, right? I want to make more money. I need more time, that sort of thing. And the reality is that your goals need to be specific. And I actually don't really even like the word goals as much as I like the word outcome, right? It's like, what's your outcome, your desired outcome? And you got to make sure that's a specific outcome, and then it needs to be able to be broken down into daily activities. And another reason I think is because I think a lot of people just have not really connected it to a big enough why. If it isn't important enough to get you out of bed when you're tired, or to call back another lead after having just been sent to voicemail 10 times, and you're just like, F this, I'm going to move on, or I'm going to sleep in, or whatever it is, then your why just isn't big enough. You have to tether this to a why that really gets you going and really gets you excited. And for a lot of people, that's difficult to do. When we do goal setting with our clients, oftentimes they're like, oh, I totally have goals, or I do this all the time. And then when we unpack that, it turns out it's a very vague goal, or it's something, the why behind it just flat out isn't good enough. And it's like, well, when push came to shove, last week when you had to cover some extra classes for your coach who was out of town, you stopped doing all of the key activities that were moving you towards your goal. So to me, that says your why wasn't big enough. And we need to pick a bigger reason for you to stay on track with your goals.
So before we move on to the 9 steps in your goal setting or outcome setting process, can you give me an example of a goal that isn't great? You're saying that some are too vague. What would be an example of something like that?
More members.
Okay. Yeah.
The most common one I hear, we just need more members. If your answer is more members, then you really need to sit down and rethink this, because that's like someone coming in to your gym and you say, great, what are your goals? What can we help you with? What do you want to achieve? And they're like, more fitness. You're like, well, what does that mean? For what? What application? Why does that even matter to you? What does success even look like? And more members, more often than not, isn't even actually the answer. Usually the answer is, I need to get paid better, or I want to pay my staff better, or I need to pay off some debt, or I need more time, freedom, that sort of thing. Now we can dig deeper on that and get specific, and now we're cooking with gas. But just saying more members usually isn't even the answer to the problem in the first place. That's a different conversation.
So having more members may actually be a thing that this gym owner needs for their business, but it's a few layers away from getting down to that thing that they really should be ruminating on and creating their action items out of, right?
Right, exactly right. It just needs to be specific. And, just like the member who comes in and says, like, I don't know, I want to be fitter, I want to lose some weight. Great. Well, how much weight and why? Why does that even matter to you? Is it because of how you look? Is it because of how you feel? Oh, you're a public speaker, or you're in sales and you feel, self-conscious when you're getting up on stage and blah, blah, blah. Like, you need to go that far down the rabbit hole to really dig out that why and make it sting a little bit, so that you you have something to latch onto that when it gets tough, you can power through it.
Perfect. So on that, why don't we start with step one? Because I feel like that would be a good segue. What categories what types of goals or metrics should people be looking at in order to make it as specific as possible?
Yeah. So step one is to identify what you want. And like I already mentioned, be as specific as possible. And in the gym business, for example, if we wanted to set goals, I like to often use some key categories. And here's some quick examples. Total revenue goal, net members, retail revenue, your premium service sales or revenue, classes or hours worked, and that sort of thing. These could be areas within your business in which we can set goals, but even those would be sub goals of a bigger goal. Because what we usually do is we set a bigger macro goal of where we're trying to go in the longer term, usually a year out. And then we say, okay, now let's then reverse engineer that. And so that's where that bigger goal comes down to then those specific categories that we then work on day to day, week by week, and so on. And a little pro tip, if you have never set a goal or made a plan and stuck to it with daily activities, or you're really struggling at the moment, like you're just hanging on for dear life, I suggest starting with just one goal. And really be sure to choose the one goal that would actually help you the most. And don't add anything new until you hit your first one. I think a lot of times people have tried setting goals and it didn't work for them because they show up and they're like, I need to set, 9 different goals. And, that's difficult for anyone to do, right? Usually start with something really small, get the win, add a little bit to it, get the win. It's the same thing like you do with your members in class or in your sessions, right? Someone is coming off of being they're completely deconditioned, overweight, haven't worked out ever or in many years. And then they're like, I got to lose this weight. I'm going to start showing up 6 days a week. You're probably going to say, hold on, let's pump the brakes. Let's ease you into this a little bit. Let's see if we can do 2 days a week. And when we've done that for maybe a few weeks, we'll go to 3 days a week and we'll ramp ourselves up, because otherwise it's going to be too much and you're going to fail and you're going to give up and you're going to repeat the process of not hitting your goal.
Great. So let's move on to step two. And by the way, you guys, I'm going to put this all into a worksheet for you, so you don't have to be writing this down or anything.
Cool. So step two is now identifying why you want your goal, right? So if you have multiple goals, identify why for each one. And really what you need to look at here is, how will this change your life? What will this do? What will be different once you hit this goal, right? So if income is one of your goals, then don't just say, oh, I just want to make, I got to make an extra 20,000 this year, or an extra, $2,000 a month or $10,000 a month, whatever it is. Make sure you articulate why it's so important. And this is, like I said, easiest if you look at it from how this will affect your life. So, well, that means I'll be able to not be stressed out all the time and not have to coach these extra hours. And I get my weekends back, which means I have way more time with my kids and with my wife. And really articulate it. And I encourage people to really write this out and as clear and as visual of language as possible, so that you can look at this and remind yourself of that feeling and that destination and can check yourself back in. And it's actually part of what we do in our daily rituals anyway. If you guys saw the morning routine episode we did a few weeks back, this is that piece, is that why. Why are you doing what you're doing? And again, be as specific as you can.
Great. Step three.
So step 3 now is to write it all down. Like I said, only 3% of adults, I think in the United States, have written goals. And you need to be able to have this, for one, putting it on paper or into a document. The act of writing it out is a form of commitment to yourself. And doing that in itself already has a pretty big impact on whether you're going to be successful or not with your goals. But to take it a step further, writing it out is only a means for me to print it out and put it up, or to take what I've handwritten and put it up somewhere where I can read it every single day. When I start my day, I go through, what are my goals, what are my actions, and what's my why, so that I am refreshed on that drive every day. I am rehearsing every single day and reminding myself every day of that desired outcome. I'm visualizing it in my daily visualizations, and I can't even express how impactful that is. A lot of people, when we first approach this stuff, think it's too woo-woo to do visualization and all that stuff. I get it. I was the same guy. I thought it was lame and corny, and how is that going to make a difference? It made all the difference. Anyone who I've had implement this, I have seen people completely change their lives and literally get to their perfect day, their desired outcome, which is one of our visualization exercises, or one of our visioning exercises, able to get to that perfect day in a year or less. And that sometimes even includes moving to a completely different state, starting a new company, making a great income. All of that can be possible if you really focus on it and look at it every day. That's why I encourage you to write it down.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the visualization has been proven to not be woo-woo at all. It's part of your reticular activating system, your RAS, that starts when you start to visualize things, your brain starts to notice things in your environment that are important, and can get you closer to that thing that you're thinking about. So like a lot of
Correct.
times, you'll be thinking about a car. Like I know you're into the Subarus. You were telling me about that the other day. I just found out
Love
that
me a
Jeff
good
really.
Subi.
So it's like I see the Subaru, that specific type, all over the place, and it's this elusive Subaru that you're not supposed to see, but it's that thing you keep thinking about it and just
Right.
shows up in your life.
Yeah.
Um,
And what it also does is it logs it as memory. And when we go through these visualization exercises, at first it feels a little forced because you're trying to picture it and work through it. But once you've done it even for a week, you're going to find that it starts to become very much more familiar and three-dimensional to you, which means your brain has now logged it as a memory. And whenever something is logged as a memory, it becomes that much easier to attain because it's just you doing it again versus this elusive, I can do, maybe, hopefully I'll be able to do that someday. Right. And it's the same thing that you see competitive athletes do all the time. You have, someone who's going in for a record lift of some kind. Do you think that's the first time that a professional athlete is visualizing that lift when they're going in to do that, whatever 1,000-pound squat or whatever it is? Of course not. They have visualized that lift successfully and the feeling of what it is to get under that bar and lower it and come back out of the hole and to re-rack it and to hold your hand up and win. Like that is practice and rehearse so that when they actually get under the bar, they're just doing it again. Right. And I know we're kind of going down the rabbit hole here, but this is why that's so important. This is what is happening when we have something and we do something as simple as write our goals and our why down and read them over and over. Right.
right. Yeah. The last thing you want to do is set and forget. That is not one of those times to be
Nope.
doing
And
that.
that's what most people do when they just talk about it. It's all just lip service because it's all just going to, disappear off into the ether in the matter of probably a couple of days. Anyway.
Okay. So step 4.
All right. So step 4 is now to set deadlines for each one. So this is where you really need to think about what it will take to meet your deadline and what that entails, right? Because sometimes people are like, oh, I want to get to making, $20,000 a month. And it's like, yeah, but buddy, you're at 2,500 a month. And I'm not saying that that's not possible, but you're currently coaching all your classes. You have no staff help. You have no money in reserves. The odds of you pulling that off are pretty unrealistic based on the assessment of where you are. Now, I'm all for big goals and I'm all for challenging yourself. And I think you learn the more that you do this successfully, how much you're actually capable of, because most people's expectations around what's possible are pretty weak. And once you get into a habit of just knocking down win after win, and not that they're all wins, but at very least, even if you set one and you don't get it, I reset it until I do get it, which means I still end up winning. I just got better at now managing my expectations or my bandwidth around that. But basically what we need to do is we need to figure out what that deadline is. What is the drop dead date for me to completely accomplish or achieve this outcome? And because that's what, to get into step 6, then we're going to start breaking that stuff down. So we need to determine what it is. And I want to just state, there is no unreasonable goal, just unreasonable deadlines, right? You could say, I want my gym to be making $200,000 a month, and you're only currently making $2,500 a month. Awesome. We're shooting for the stars. I'm all about that. But if you then tell me I want to do that in, the next 6 months, that's where the issue is. But if we said, hey, we could try to achieve that in the next few years or the next, whatever, if we can do the math and the daily activity and monthly and so on makes sense and is doable and sustainable, then we're in the game.
Yeah, that's why step 6 that you're going to get into in a sec is so important, because the creating a deadline is pretty challenging, right? you don't want to set a goal that's too small.
Mhm.
Um, nor like setting a huge goal is something that comes to mind sometimes when I'm goal setting, and I think, well, crazier things have happened, right? Like you don't really know what's possible. But then I guess when you get down into breaking it into daily activities, that can tell you what a reasonable deadline is or not.
Exactly right. That's where it comes out in the wash, right? If this is going to be doable or not, right? And uh, again, just to kind of draw the parallel with what we experience with our clients or members, is that this we get this all the time as coaches, in that you have a person who comes in, they're like, I got to get rid of these 40 pounds. My doctor says I'm going to be on heart medication. I've got this vacation coming up in 2 months. And I got to lose 40 pounds. And it's like, can you help me do that? And it's like, well, maybe technically that's possible, but that's a terrible idea. Like what that's going to take. You just told me 2 minutes ago that you haven't worked out in 2 years and that you've got a bum shoulder and a bad back. And you're telling me you want to lose 40 pounds in 2 months, probably not going to go too great. And, or what it's going to take is going to be beyond miserable. Right. And it's the same thing when it comes to this. You need to look at the reality of what it breaks down to. So yeah, step 6 is break it down to daily activities. And this is where you basically are going to reverse engineer your timelines to determine what you need to do on a monthly, weekly, and then daily basis to work towards that goal. And this is where it starts to feel a lot more doable, right? Because if you're thinking like, oh my gosh, like I said, I've got to do, I don't know, 100 sales calls this month, right? Or let's just say 90 sales calls a month. And you sit here and you do the math and you're like, oh my gosh, wait, that only breaks down to like 3 a day. Oh, I can do 3 a day. Right. But when it all adds up, you find yourself getting to your goal. But if you just were to look at, I've got to make 100 sales calls, it's going to be overwhelming. And it's going to, I did 5 and I did 10. It just feels like I'm not making any progress. It's just too far out. Breaking it down to the ridiculous, to the daily, is what makes it bite size. And this is what allows us to get there, right? What's the old joke? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So
Yeah, I felt like there was a sex joke in there, but I couldn't think of it quick enough.
there is, but that would be inappropriate. And you've got to do it one bite at a time. And if you can do it in a way to where you set your list up, or you know what you need to do every day in order to get to success, then you're then able to prioritize that. Then it becomes much more reasonable, and it actually isn't that hard. Which is the big realization that so many people have, and gym owners that we work with have, is that before they start with us, it's this big, daunting, overwhelming, journey from, struggling and barely making ends meet, if at all making ends meet, to running this thriving gym with X amount of members and me being able to pay my staff well and take time off and the gym not catch fire and all those things. It feels like a massive gap, but we can close that gap really quickly if we just know exactly where to focus and are then able to do those little daily activities. So for the first step of that is reverse engineer the timeline. And then the second one is then to add it to your daily routine in a way that you can check something off when you complete each daily task. Some people like to use whiteboards. Some people use, printed checklists or journals, or you can use digital tools like, your iPhone checklist if you want, whatever works for you. We call this daily, and this should be your daily activities that are the must happens. These are the things that have to happen every day. And again, if we kind of go back to that daily routine or that morning routine, there's a reason why a lot of people who win at business and life and whatnot suggest, win the morning, win the day. I build this into my morning routine so that I get it all done before I even start reacting to my day. So before I start getting on my calls and dealing with clients and someone walking in and, a vendor this issue, and then the plumber showed up late and it's threw off my schedule, all the things are going to happen anyway. If you can, build it into your morning. And I already know that people are going to be like, yeah, but I coach at 6 a.m. I'm already getting up at 4:30. This doesn't take very long. And the activities that you probably need to do probably don't either. And if maybe, doing sales calls early in the morning isn't appropriate, then great. Make it a priority as early as possible in your day so that you can get it done first. Because inevitably, everything is going to be flying at you throughout the day anyway. So getting your priorities done as early in the day as possible while you have as much willpower as possible and you're not worn out is going to not only make the day better, but you're going to be more likely to achieve those goals day in and day out because you're you're the most energized early in your day typically.
Yeah, it definitely feels good to check some things off your list early in the day.
Definitely.
Um, Step 7.
All right, step number 7, being able to track your success. So however you decide to track your daily activities, make sure you're able to look back in order to see how you did. So this is where you got to look at kind of the method you're using to track. So if it's just a list that you are like checking off every day on your whiteboard and then just wiping it clean, that wouldn't work. What I would suggest is to set something up where you have, week 1, 2, 3, 4, and or days, like oftentimes you can just do a month calendar and list out the different boxes and just check them off each day. You've got 3 boxes, 3 sales calls, 2 blah blah blah, 100 burpees, whatever you're working towards. You're going to put those out and have that daily so you can check it off, so that at a glance you can look back at your week. If you do some sort of like weekly retrospective or anything like that, you can look back and say, cool, I hit my goals 4 out of 5 days this week. That's pretty awesome, right? And if you're feeling ambitious, I'm going to make that day a missed day up tomorrow on Saturday or something, right? So you can stay on track. It's very easy to stay on track, or at very least look back and see how you did, which is not just to analyze and see, where you missed, but it's also to be able to give yourself a pat on the back where you're like, man, I used to not do sales calls like ever. And maybe now I'm doing them almost every single day. And look at how that's reflecting on my numbers, which will often motivate you to shoot for a better score, as far as your follow through on your goals is concerned.
Definitely. It really gives you some closure on the things that you've accomplished, which I think is important in this type of business where you probably don't have somebody on your team that's watching you make all these sales calls and do all these things that you haven't been comfortable doing prior, and telling you, good job, I can't believe you did that. That's awesome. You're the top of the totem pole here, so there's nobody
Right.
there to do that with you except for yourself.
You're exactly right. And that's actually part of step 8 is that, we want to be accountable to someone. And so many times when you're the gym owner, you're the business owner, you're kind of on an island by yourself, because not only is it not maybe appropriate to talk about your goals to your staff or to members? It can be difficult. So what I encourage you to do, though, is to find someone who you can tell your plan to and ask them to help hold you accountable. And I suggest, especially if you're just getting started, to start with a 30-day challenge, if you will, to where you're going to say, I'm going to do this every day for the next 30 days, or, Monday through Friday for the next X amount of time, something like that. Ideally, if you can do it every single day, it's going to become a habit that much better, because you're going to even be doing it on your off days, which really cements it in. But anyway, at very least, pick a short period like this and have an accountability buddy. And, once you get through those 30 days, you can go to kind of like a weekly format, but put something undesirable on the line. So this is where, every day that you don't complete your daily activities, you have to pay the fine, which could be money. It could be burpees. It could be doing something that you don't like doing or something embarrassing. You've got to put something on the line here so that you're motivated, even if it's kind of you tricking yourself, by, I don't want to do that. Every time I don't do it, I've got to do 50 burpees and put it on Facebook or something stupid like that. Then you're going to be far less likely to miss those days, which at the end of the day, it isn't about punishment and reward as much as it is about creating the habit, right? If you just do it every single day, it's just going to start to become you. It starts to become your normal. It becomes part of your routine, and you even start to miss it when you don't do it. So I would start with that. And then on the flip side of that, I find it just as important to set prizes or rewards for you actually completing this. So I wouldn't do that daily necessarily, but I would start with some monthly milestones, especially that first month. This can be something a little bit smaller, but still fun, and that rewards you and really makes you feel like you celebrated, the win as you accomplished it. And I mean, this can be all different shapes and sizes. It could be, going and getting a massage, or like, going to the barber shop and getting the deluxe, package. I'm speaking for myself. Things like that, obviously within your means. We're not going to say I'm going to buy a new car when I, do my activity for 30 days, but, giving yourself something feels really good, right? A day off or something like that. But then for the bigger main goal, we want to make this something really juicy and something that you wouldn't normally spring for, maybe a vacation or a program or certification that you've been dying to take. That's where, maybe your new car or your new apartment or, putting a down payment on a house or whatever that thing is. Like, give yourself something to really celebrate the hard work, because you need to also get into the habit of getting used to winning and getting what you're after is kind of an underlying message here. Because so many people in business, there's so many things that we do that we just fail at. It's just part of the process. Using sales as an example, you usually fail more than you win in selling, at very least for a very long time, until you get very good at it. And then maybe you get into where you're, over 50%. And I know there'll be some people who are like, I'm at 80%. I have no sales background. Well, you're probably just underpriced. So the point here is that you have to get into that habit of looking at something challenging and saying, okay, I'm going to deconstruct that. And I'm going to break it down to daily activity to where I know I can crush that and still live my life. And when I get there, I get this treat. And it just works. We find ourselves just getting better at it to where eventually you don't necessarily need the reward so much. But even in my experience, I've been, setting and achieving goals for many, many years. And I still do that because frankly, for me, I like to live a very minimalist kind of day-to-day routine. And I try to be lean in my approach to my, my work and my time spent on things. So I have as much time as possible for my family and whatnot. So that means I don't treat myself. I'm not going out to eat every night. I'm not going out to do all these things. And even though I could, I don't. So that when I do have those moments, we do have those little celebrations that they feel that much better.
Great. Well, that kind of all encompasses the step 9 here, the final step, which is to have fun and enjoy the process.
Right. Exactly. Have fun and celebrate the wins.
Perfect. I think we a lot of times forget about that step because it can be a challenge to climb up that hill. But what's the point if you're having a terrible time doing it? There's no point in that.
Exactly right. We will have those moments initially where, we're starting and it's really hard and it feels like it's going against the grain. But that's inherent in anything new that we're trying to bring into our routine, right? And the reality is if it's tough, it's probably why you've been avoiding it. And the daily practice is what makes the tough reasonable and all of a sudden becomes a non-issue, right? Like people working out, oftentimes, you have members who I look at and they're like, talking about, I'm training 6 days a week and I'm on a custom program and I entered in this comp and I'm doing that. And it's like, dude, you remember where you were 3 years ago? You came here saying like, I have a hard time coming to the gym more than once a week. And, I just failed in my routine. But we did the work to establish the habit and the routine to where now when they go on vacation, they're trying to sneak off to do workouts and sneak things in because it's now part of who they are. It's part of their DNA. And that's really the goal. That's what we're going for, is to make this your way of life so that you can really look at anything that you want, whether it's in business or in your personal life, to be able to say, I want that. This is why it's important to me. And I'm going to go after it. And I'm not going to stop until I get it. And it just makes life that much more fun because you realize you can do whatever the hell you want. It's all available to you if you're willing to do the work.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's also important to remember that the goal is what you should really be fixed on, not the method in which to get there. And I think earlier you had talked about like being committed to your outcome. That's the important thing here, because once you start this routine up, you can't be too fixed on this is the way that goal is going to be achieved, because that's when you start to do this visualization, certain things are going to come into your life that make that probably easier to achieve or just at least different. So be flexible 100%. With your plan as well.
And that's why we focus on the outcome and not just the habit or the routine as much, because the outcome and that why is really the whole purpose for this, right? And what we may be doing right now, or for the first 6 months or whatever it is we're getting to it. You may discover a shortcut, right? Or a bigger lever that you can pull to where you're like, wait a minute, if my goal was to add, grow by 10 net new members every month, and wait a minute, I have this corporate opportunity where I could add like 40 in one shot. It's like, go pull the bigger lever, right? Tony Robbins talks about this all the time, in that it's not about the activity itself. It's about staying focused on that outcome and that why, because along the way, we usually find better ways because we become smarter. We become more skilled at these things that we're doing every day. And you start to find, we're problem solvers. So we start to find a better way, right? But at very least, you have a fallback. And so part of this too, and when we work with clients, we revisit the method every month to see, okay, so is that working for us? Because if it's not working or there's a better way to do it, then let's change it. We just did this with a client 2 weeks ago where they have growth goals, and that corporate example was exactly what we did. And we realized, wait a minute, we went and did one corporate presentation and corporate wellness program and literally hit her goals for 2 months for growth across the board. So it's like, okay, well, let's readjust our goals and our habits, because now let's go and try to get one of those every month. And we readjusted, and she could get to her goals that were over a year out now in about 6 to 7 months. That's a big difference, right? But that was not even visible at the time when we got started, because she was really caught up in just, I can't, and I don't know how, and I'm just too busy. But we broke it down to the ridiculous. We got the habits. We got momentum, right? You start gaining momentum. You start gaining awareness and clarity, and all of a sudden, more opportunities start to open up for those shortcuts.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for sharing all this.
My pleasure.
Like I had mentioned before, I'm going to put all these steps into a downloadable worksheet for you guys who are listening, and then we'll post that in the network a little later today. So just as a friendly reminder to everybody, we're going to be holding our live Q&A this Friday at noon Pacific. So if you guys have any questions on goal setting or any of these 9 steps, especially number 9, how to have fun, Marcus knows a lot about that.
The trick is margaritas.
That'll be your place to get right. His garage project, super fun. Add margaritas. It helps number 9 go by real fast. So now, as I mentioned before, we also have some spots open for the Foundations program. So this is your completely custom coaching program that we're offering for gyms who are right at that cusp of seeing some big things happen, but are struggling to get over that hump and onto the other side. So if you are interested in doing that, all you need to do is hop on a call with Marcus for you to see if this is a good fit for you. And to do that, you just go to gymwright.com/Marcus with a K. And if you guys sign up before the end of this month, I think you have about 7 days left, you'll get $500 off of the regular price, which is pretty good. So I'll post the link to his scheduler in the comments. So all you need to do is click on that and set up your call. And that's pretty much it for us. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And thanks for the interview, Marcus. My pleasure. Thank you, Jess. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Cool. And I'll look forward to hopefully seeing you guys on Friday for the Q&A. All right. Bye-bye. Bye.